And I had been for about a decade, and I was used to feeling pretty confident with what I was doing. Like many of you, I got to work with a great team. We got to work on interesting problems. But I do remember on this particular day, I was not feeling confident. I was feeling overwhelmed. My manager had just asked me for our project roadmap, and I knew that we didn't have a project roadmap. Everybody just knew their job and did it. And so when tasks came in, when work came in, the projects came in, we said what I thought was the only valid answer, which is yes. And then we had to figure out a way to make it happen. But in this particular time, all of this swirling and the feeling like we don't have a plan, that was compounded because we were in the middle of a major systems upgrade with new features, new programs. Felt like all the parts were moving, and I was juggling 100 balls of status meetings and chats and email messages, like trying to count the stars. And it was like, there has got to be a better way to do this. And so that's the question. The question is, when you have 100 different things that you could be working on, and more things are bubbling up every single day, how do you keep track of it all? How do you know that you're working on the most important things? How do you share? How do you collaborate if you're part of a team? And I think most of us are part of a team. How do you have accountability in the sense, like, does somebody have this? And do we have capacity? Do we need to push back on scope? Do we need to, adjust capacity? I mean, what are we going to do, right? Because you can't keep it all in your head. Nobody else can read your mind. And even if they could, we're actually not that good at keeping it in our head because our brains are thinking machines. Our brains are thinking machines. Okay, we're having PowerPoint issues here. There we go. Your brain's a thinking machine, not a storage machine. I can't even go to the basement and come back with what I wanted, right? Like, I go down there, I see the laundry needs to be switched, and I come back with a basket of socks. And it's like, I mean, I've just because we're friends, right? I feel like I wouldn't tell anybody this, but I've done that more than once. Like, not ever, I mean in a row. Where you go back, you're like, oh, that's what I wanted, and you go back down. And so really what I want to share is just a simple idea. And the simple idea is this. Externalize your work on a single shared platform. And so to break that down, like what exactly does that mean? Let's talk about it a little bit. So externalize, your brain is never going to stop asking you, what am I forgetting? Am I forgetting something? What am I forgetting? Am I working on the most important thing right now? What about this? It's never going to stop asking you that. So when you externalize it, anything that comes in your brain, you put it out on this single shared platform, get it out of your brain. And let me just tell you, a side benefit is your cognitive load, that sort of background stress that you might feel of like, am I forgetting something? That just goes way down because you're not forgetting anything. It's all in there. You may have allocated it to Q2, may have allocated it to next year, but you don't have to worry that you're forgetting something. You get visibility. So if you need to talk to your manager and you're like, and I am feeling slammed right now, well, what are you working on? I'm working on all the things. Now you have a visual place to say, this is what I'm working on. You need me to shift something? Fantastic. We can move that to right now. What are we going to move from right now to there? So that externalization, that's the kind of the first thing. And what do you externalize? You're actually externalizing your work. So that doesn't mean that you don't, have other tools because we're talking about using it on a single shared platform, but it's going to be things like the rationale. Why did you make a certain decision? It's going to be any artifacts you have. You have vendor quotes, you have diagrams that you come up with, you have subtasks, you have this project that depends upon this other project. And so it's really blocked for now. Anything that you're working on can go in this shared platform. And I hope you hear, like, I'm not actually advocating for a specific tool. We'll get there in a little bit. I'm really advocating for an idea. And by virtue of doing this, you externalize your work. It will also become a history of your work. And so when you need to go back and you say, man, I know we made this decision last spring, but I don't remember why. Instead of like digging through email to try to find it, you're like, oh, I'll just go to this project, this thing that I was working on, and I'll look and I'll see the rationale. We do that all the time. And on the other side of things, if you have something and you're like, hey, I'm gonna get rid of Windows Server 2025 as a future project for years and years and years away. And then you read something or somebody sends you something, and oh, that'll be really useful for this. You stick it in that project, and when you get to it, you've already sort of pre-done some of the work. So that's what you do. Externalizing your work works great for a team as well. On a single. Okay, what is that all about? Well, we all have used Google Docs. I remember when Google Docs came on the scene, I thought, what an amazing collaboration platform. I don't have any, the bane of my existence is you open an Office document, it's like, this document is locked for editing, read only. Like so Google Docs came in, I'm like, man, you can collaboratively edit this, you can do commenting, it was amazing. And yet that led me somewhere that I didn't want to get. It led me here. Okay, we've got email and OneNote and Excel and Box and SharePoint and Teams. And I mean, all of these tools, they're great. But like moment of honesty among friends, right? I've been vulnerable with you guys. Has anybody ever felt like, I know that this decision is somewhere, I know that this document is somewhere, but I don't actually know where it is? Okay, one honest person, two, okay, oh, there we go, okay. Yeah, so it's actually become a bad thing. They're all good tools, but the good tools have become a bad thing. So what am I doing? I'm advocating for a single shared tool. Some of you maybe are thinking ahead, where's this going? Well, what we don't want to end up with is the famous XKCD, where it's like, hey, we have 14 tools. We have 14 competing standards. Let's create one to rule them all. Soon, now we have that many plus one, right? All we get is add to the chaos. And so in order to do that, you really need to be able to say, we're gonna go on a single platform. So there's a cost to doing that. You saw the screenshot with all of those are good tools. And when you choose to sort of standardize on a single platform, that means that you're sometimes not going to be using the best tool for the job, right? I mean, that's sort of our mantra. I use the best tool for the job. But if you use the best tool for the job, then you're going to be using like a million different tools. And so that's the cost. But the payoff is huge. It means that you always know where your content is. And it doesn't mean that you can never use Google Docs. It doesn't mean that you can never use OneNote. It's just because you have this central platform that you're using. If you want to use a Google Doc for collaboration, go right ahead, but drop the link and the description in the single tool. So that is actually your source of truth. That is so game-changing. Because I mean, I actually start to gaslight myself sometimes. It's like, I remember getting this email. And then after 20 minutes, it's like, well, maybe it wasn't an email. Maybe it was a conversation, right? You don't actually know anymore. So, oh yeah, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. So you're gonna externalize your work on a single tool. And that may also mean that you need a content strategy. So a content strategy is just we actually have an actual document that says, for this use case, we use this tool. For this use case, we use this tool. There's not necessarily a right and a wrong. If you're going to do meeting agendas, you could do meeting agendas in Google Docs. You could do meeting agendas in OneNote. Our team historically has used OneNote, and it makes it really easy to find. If you're looking for something that happened in a meeting, it's in OneNote. Another example is I talked about sort of this chaotic process that we were in where everything was moving and it was like trying to count the stars, right? So as a part of that, we have a significant downtime. It's all hands on deck. And when we bring things back up, it's common, whatever. I think normal part of the process is to have issues or bugs or something as you're bringing a new system online. And so we've decided that we use Teams for that. but teams actually space for tracking bugs and issues. And so part of our content strategy is, listen, let's have an interactive discussion in teams, but if it's more than about a minute of discussion, we are going to move that onto the shared platform. Because can you imagine, and I don't have to imagine, can you imagine in teams saying, like, oh, we identified 7 issues, and it was like a whirlwind of identification, right? Who was following up on what? What is the status? Did that get resolved? Does this depend on, is this a blocker on something else? And it is all interwoven. So we've used our, basically our content strategy for that. And it's not like it's a document that I am ever referring to. It is something that does exist, but I've really just internalized it. So I definitely would recommend something like that. Yeah, thank you so much, Laura. And then thinking about the shared platform. So again, not here to really sell you a tool. I'm here to sell you an idea, externalizing your work on a single shared platform. We, as a team, have tried many tools. We currently use Sana, and I think it's like pretty decent. It's great. I am very happy with it. But yeah, externalize your work on a single shared platform. I think we've all come out of a place. You come out of a meeting. You had this experience before. If I would nod with me once I say this, if you can relate to this. You come out of a meeting and you sort of feel this little like rage, and you're like, that should have been an email. Anybody experienced that before? Right? That's all the time. Right? That should have been an email. So with this idea, I am not advocating that all your meetings will become emails. I'm actually going one step further and saying there actually doesn't even need to be that email. Not a meeting, not an email. Instead, when somebody says, what are you working on? What's the status? Is this done? Do you have a blocker? What's the holdup? Who's working on this? The answer is just a link. It's not a meeting. It's not an email. And eventually, the goal, right? So, we're not going to necessarily aim for the stars initially, but eventually the goal will be that question doesn't even come. Because you think about this idea like a race chart, who's responsible, who's accountable, who needs to be informed. They don't actually need to ask you what is going on with this project. What are the blockers? Are you on track? Are you not on track? Because they know this tool exists. They know that you're just going to send them a link. And so now they can just go there. Go ahead. So I don't want to just pretend like it's all like the most amazing ever. Before I've told you about some of the benefits of this system, but I also need to be honest and share with you the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, or why this will never work, right? There's all sorts of problems with sort of a pie in the sky idea like this. One of the problems is this, the sort of do nothing idea. How many of you guys at some point during the day have heard at least one idea where you're like, oh, this is an interesting idea that for me or maybe somebody else? Anybody heard anything interesting today? Okay, few interesting ideas, right? Usually, when I leave a conference, I leave full of new ideas, and I promptly go back to the office and implement almost none of them. That's usually the case. So I don't actually want you to leave this talk today full of new ideas. I want you to leave with just one idea, right? Externalizing your work on a single shared platform. But that is a risk, is that you're like, oh, I got to overhaul my process. I got all these other ideas, and you end up just doing nothing. And you end up with the status quo forever. There's 3 other risks that I want to talk about, and they are an elephant, a pyramid, and a monster. We can go to the next slide. Let's talk about the pyramid first. And it's this idea that is not a Harrison Ford, by the way. That is what ChatGPT gives you when you give a description of an archaeologist, adventurer, professor. And then he has a bullet. I don't know why he has a bullet. So another risk is if you think, hey, we do things a certain way, and our tooling is good enough. Our tool is good enough, right? So when you're thinking that, you're saying, yeah, I know we made this decision about this vendor last spring, and I think it was an email, and I'm willing to spend 20 minutes like sifting through the sediment. It is like an archaeological dig, and you're trying to find where was that decision, and then you find the decision in forward. Quick question. I mean, that is a reality, right? And so if you think your existing tooling is good enough, then that's going to be a hindrance for operating this. The next thing is that there's actually a lot of imposters going around. There's a lot of imposters. So we probably have also all had the experience. You come into a project kickoff meeting and somebody opens up Google Sheets or they open up Excel and it gives you the illusion of kind of the things that I'm talking to you about because it looks so organized. You've got rows and columns and responsibilities and status and colors. Like how could it not be exactly what you're looking for, right? But all of the things we already talked about, right? Your collaborative decisions, those are still in Google Docs. The vendor stuff that you got with the quote, that's still in email somewhere, right? The diagram that you came, that's in OneDrive. You don't actually have that single platform. And if I can get nerdy, I mean, this is an IT conference, so I'm gonna like just take freedom. The last talk I went to was on anime, so I can get a little nerdy. There's a Dungeons and Dragons character called a Mimic, right? And it looks like a treasure chest. And it not only looks like a treasure chest, but it's exactly where you would expect to find a treasure chest. And when the adventurer comes and they're excited for their treasure, then they leave. Okay, and that is what Excel does. It's the promise of something that's going to solve all your problems. It's a promise of not just a tool that's good enough, but a tool that is good. And it is actually an imposter. And then the last thing is that anytime you switch something, it's change. And I don't know if you guys have been around UW-Madison for a while, but like there's been this thing called change happening for like the last 20 years, right? It's just never ending. And change is actually really, really difficult. And I'm not just talking about at an institutional level. Change is difficult for me personally. It's difficult for individuals, right? Even if you're not entirely satisfied with the way that things have gone historically, change is difficult. And it's difficult for teams. Sometimes some people are like, hey, I'm excited about this new thing. But a lot of us are like, no, I'm actually quite comfortable with how we've done things. And so in the premise behind the book Switch is that the human brain is made up of two parts. And it is an elephant that has a rider on top. And so if you've ever been to a circus or can imagine what it would be like, right? You've got a rider on top of an elephant. And the thought is, like who's in control? And maybe your initial thought is, well, the rider is sort of directing the elephant. But if the rider and the elephant disagree on the direction that they should go, the elephant wants to go left, the rider wants the elephant to go right, who's going to win? The elephant, right? And so the premise behind the book is that the rider part of your brain is the rational part of your brain. It's the one that appeals to analytical skills. And when you're thinking about making a change, it's like, well, what are the pros and what are the cons and what is the cost, right? And if you can keep the elephant happy, you can kind of be in control. But the elephant is the emotional part of our brain. And the emotional part of our brain is stubborn and unreasonable and sick of the last 3 change initiatives that didn't actually pan out the way they were supposed to. And so it just goes whatever direction it wants to do. And it is not enough to provide a rational, analytical solution to your team or honestly to yourself. And so actually, I mean, I've been trying to implement that idea even throughout this talk, right? We started with the idea of feeling overwhelmed and trying to count the stars and all the pieces and the peace that can come, right? That's appealing to the elephant inside of us. And then the rider inside of us, that's appealing to, hey, here are the steps and here's how you do it. And so I want to just encourage you, if you yourself struggle with change regarding this or actually anything more broadly at UW or in life or your team does, Switch is a very, very easy read. Highly, highly recommend that. So I want to get into a couple of examples. This is, I mean, it is really difficult to get a detailed slide that fits in PowerPoint at a reasonable font size. And so this is like a super baby example. But this is what you might imagine from a project pipeline, right? You have a ton of things that are in progress. You have people that are doing it. You have due days, complexity. I mean, it's just what worked for that we're using, right? Priority, we have a bunch more columns like status, like it's blocked or depending on something else, cost, things like that. And then there's these sections, what's you're working on now in Q2, Q3, long-term pipeline. I think we do like 4 or 5 quarters out. But what happens if you stand back and you kind of squint? You squint at that. What does it almost look like?
Spreadsheet.
A spreadsheet. Thank you, Sarah. That is exactly why I said Excel and Google Sheets, and they're an imposter, because this almost looks, if you squint, it almost looks like a spreadsheet, right? So the difference is here, right? You have things like notifications. You have discussions happening. You have subtasks. You have artifacts that you attach to it. You have the ability for relationships between tasks where you say, hey, you know what we're working on? We're working on a CAD migration. You know what? That's blocking everything, right? I mean, so you have all of those relationships. And if we go to the next slide here and click on one specific, this is just, whatever, this is contrived. I wouldn't necessarily use this for a clock, right? But you've got subtasks, you've got attachments, you've got conversations happening. And there's really a lot of different things that you can do. You can do Gantt charts, and you can do dashboards. Again, we're trying to think of some of the options. Asana, Trello, Monday.com. Most of them have a free time slot, or a free plan. So here's my encouragement to you. You can take that step towards this of getting something out of your head, and it is actually game changing. I think we've been doing this for, Zach, I don't know, not 10 years, but 8 years, 10 years, something like
6, 7.
Yeah, so, we've been doing it for many, many years. It is totally game changing. And the other encouragement I would give to you is don't let perfect be the enemy of good, right? I do like that line. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Because if this is all as exciting to you, the temptation is going to be like, okay, I know Ryan uses Asana, but there are like 15 tools. So the first course is to make detailed analytical, research on each of those tools, figure out what the best tool is. Yeah, okay, Phil's not. Right? Down and down it goes. And what happens? You don't do anything. So iteration is really cheap. And I've learned over the years to have a bias towards, Laura, if you could advance for me, the bias towards taking imperfect action, right? That is so much better than letting perfect get enemy into it and not ever developing anything. And so when you are able to externalize your work on a single shared platform, I really want you to get that. I mean, I think I've said that like 10 or 15 times in the talk. That frees you up. It frees your cognitive load. And you don't have to worry about what should I be working on, and am I forgetting something, and what about the team, and who's got it, and where's this thing, and what about the future, and what about the blood? All of that is just managed. So that's my encouragement to you. Thank you. Yeah, that's it, right? So we do have time for a few questions. I think you got 4 minutes for questions. If anybody has questions, or I would also take wisdom from the audience. So if you guys have tried something that worked really well, if you have something that you tried that didn't work, I would take questions or wisdom from you. I don't know if there's anything in chat either. Or
Nothing in the chat so far, but it does take folks a little bit to start writing. So anyone in the room?
Zach, yeah. Or
Hi, I'm Zach. Ryan's my manager, so love that guy.
softball questions.
Yeah. Well, what I wanted to put forward to the room is, so we use Ryan's idea of Asana, and I've liked it pretty well. I, live in co-housing. Literally, it came up last week. Like, why don't we have a project management ticket software system? And I'm like, yeah, I could build that. Is anyone using any open source or like self-hosted stuff? Because I'm just throwing it into LLMs right now and seeing what LLMs are saying. And like, there's a lot of stuff out there, but of course, it's only free if your time is worth nothing. So I was wondering if anyone has used it before, would love to hear that at some point, but I know we have limited time for questions. Come, if you happen to see me, please, I would love to hear it.
I think School of Ed has something. I don't see anybody in the School of Ed here. But
Phil, I don't know.
Just as far as work tracking, one of the most magical experiences I had was that So with the WhiskWeb team, a number of years ago, we had managed to build up, obviously the world's largest backlog, because that is what backlogs do. And so when we changed products, the decision, which was painful but good, to not bring the backlog along was the most amazing thing ever. And it was good for a bunch of reasons, including we didn't have that mental overhead of oh, we have all the stuff and no timelines though. So as opposed to you said hey, maybe we're going to do that 2 years from now or next quarter, whatever. And that is now with that backlog. It was when did we get time, air quotes, which never happens. But so we were freed from that. And then just the lightness and knowing that we were either going to pitch things out of the backlog quickly so we wouldn't have hundreds of items in there. And so that was, again, like I said, one of the most magical experiences I ever had. So the value of switching tools was not necessarily that the next tool was better, it was the fact that we chose to make a process decision on that. So
That's
a
great.
pitch for other people.
That's great, Phil. I've also heard of people creating a never list, which is exactly what it sounds like, right? You have this idea, you need to get it out of your head because there's that background cognitive load and stress, but you're not actually planning on doing it. So you stick it on a never list. And then, if you are worried that you're forgetting something important, you can go read through that, but you don't plan on taking anything off of it. Yeah.
Before I go to Craig, Sam online says a lot of tools could be retooled for project management. For example, SMPH, Jira, RedCap. Starting from familiar tools can be a good initial iteration.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, so I do want to double down on your endorsement for the book Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. I'm an organizational change manager full time. People will come to me hey, can I get some advice on organizational change management? My reaction is always I have a great 42-point plan for you that you can implement in just 6 months. And that scares everyone away. So it's dude, can you just give me 2 tips or something? That book Switch for anybody at any level of change. It's just really simple guidance. You'll get 1 to 2 really great nuggets out of there, and it's super quick and readable. So I do highly recommend it. So I felt that was a good recommendation.
And it's full of stories. If you're so many ideas. No, it's full of stories too. So
If you want to go really deep into the Elephant and the Rider, that's based off of, people have read it, Thinking Fast and Slow, and by Daniel Kahneman. That's a way deeper, thicker book, but Nobel Prize winning Daniel Kahneman, but that's where that comes from. Switch is a lightweight kind of concept for that. So really good recommendation.
thanks, Greg.
All right, one more. You need to wrap up. So this will be last one.
Yeah, I'm just curious on how you keep things from drifting into Asana. For example, Asana could be set up to be ticketing system that might work better than the existing ticketing system. So how do you go about fighting that urge to move things into Asana? That
Yeah,
probably shouldn't be.
Great question. So I actually don't necessarily want to fight the urge. If it makes sense and it's better, I've played around with more than one time about moving one-on-ones into Asana, and I haven't done that yet. But the specific answer to your question, if it doesn't appear that it has significant advantages, I just go back to the content strategy document, right? So our tickets, we're going to be using something called Halo, starting in the next week or two. And because we made that decision, even though I may be tempted to use a different tool, there's huge value in saying I have a content strategy. All my ticketing goes into Halo. All my meeting agendas go into OneNote. All of my work management, project management, task management, teamwork, that's Asana. And not that you can't change your mind later, but it has to be intentional. Otherwise, you end up with that slide where there's now I use 2 tools for the same kind of thing. Now I use 4. So thank you very much.
There are some snacks outside before the